Thank you. Can you guys in the back hear me okay? We're good? All right, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Burson, for that introduction. Yes, I was a high school teacher for 36 years, and I coached football, wrestling, and lacrosse during that period of time, and I've been retired for 6 years. I'm an old dog now at 64. Not as old as Mr. Papal, but an old dog nonetheless. And Mr. Papal and I were teachers together in Lynbrook High School. That's why I can say that. The story I'm going to tell you today is it's an emotional story. And the reason that I'm telling it is because I've been invited. I did write a book, though. All right, I wrote this book, which is up there, Forgiving Kevin. Kevin's one of my two sons, my youngest one. And, well, let me just get into the story, I think, okay? That'll be the easiest way to go. What would it have been? When Kevin was 12 years old, his mom and I split up. And we lived in Merrick at the time, and his older brother, who's on the right there, Matt, he was a senior at Calhoun High School, and Kevin was going into 7th grade. And when we were splitting up, Kevin wanted to come to Lynbrook High School, where I coached and taught. Because from the time he was the littlest kid, from the time he was like, the time he was really an infant, he was on my sideline or in the gym. I was a history teacher, but when I was coaching wrestling, he was in the gym, and he was out in the field during lacrosse and football, even during practices. So his heroes growing up were the Lynbrook High School kids, and the idea of coming to Lynbrook and going to Lynbrook and playing for those teams, that was really a big wish of his. So when his mom and I split up, we kept the house in Merrick, and my mom, who's in the middle there, moved in with me and Kevin into a house in Lynbrook. And that's him at 12, okay? Now, Kevin, when we moved, Kevin was a learning disabled kid. He was labeled learning disabled. That means only that he had trouble reading. The letters didn't look right to him. You know, it's kind of a form of dyslexia type of thing. And when you have that, when you have a learning disability, you need extra help. And he got, especially at Lynbrook, where I knew all the teachers and administrators and everything, he got that extra help. He got special ed help. He had reading labs. He had extra time on tests. He got specific teachers. And he did well because both his parents were teachers and both his parents were coaches. And what Kevin wanted to be was a great student athlete. That's what he wanted to be. That's what a parent also wants his kid to be when he's in high school, right? While he was there, he was on the honor roll, despite the fact that he had trouble. He always had his homework and stuff done, but he was particularly good at athletics. And he played football and he wrestled, but he was particularly good at lacrosse. And at that time, so were we at Lynbrook. We were particularly good at lacrosse. And kind of a father and son's dream, when he was a junior and senior, we won 2 New York State championships in both his junior and senior year, and he's one of the stars of the team. And those don't come easy. I mean, those are the only 2 state championships, those lacrosse ones, team championships, in Lynbrook school history, in any sport, over any year. So they're rare. They're real rare. And for us, to accomplish that, that's my favorite picture. I even have that on the back of, that's on the back of the book there too. That's my favorite picture of Kevin and I because that gold medal hanging around his neck there, that was at Hofstra after the second state championship. Kevin had 4 goals and 3 assists in the championship game. And if you were to tell me at that point that life wasn't perfect, I'd say you're crazy. We were the two happiest people that you could be. He was honorable mention All-American, and we were state champs. And they had parties everywhere. The parents had parties. They put these big signs in the ground in front of people's houses. A New York State champ lives here in front of all those houses. You couldn't go into the stores without your picture being up there, and everything was all about this, you know. It was wonderful. There's no question about it. And Kevin received a Division I scholarship. We picked the school carefully. The guy who's got his arm around Kevin there, that's Mr. John Cannella. Now, Mr. John Cannella, I know Mr. Papaul would remember him. He hired me at Lynbrook High School, and he had 5 sons. And he was a Cortland guy, and I was a Cortland State guy, and they were looking for a lacrosse coach, and I got hired basically more than I could, because I could teach social studies, I could coach lacrosse. And he had 5 sons. The youngest of those 5 sons, Greg Cannella, is the head coach of the University of Massachusetts. And he played for me at Lynbrook. So it was kind of like a family thing. We were kind of making sure that Kevin, who had some special needs, when I say special needs, I mean particularly in the classroom, that we'd have a coach that would care, you know, that would really care. And if there's any problem, certainly the coach and I, you know, considering I was his high school coach, you know, we'd be able to figure things out. So I can't tell you how grateful I am to this day that we sent him to UMass. But at UMass was where he became addicted to OxyContin. Now, that's OxyContin. It doesn't look that scary, right? It's the most powerful opiate that there is. That and heroin. Heroin and OxyContin are like brothers, or first cousins at least. They're the same thing, except that OxyContin looks like that, harmless. And what you do is you chop it up with a razor blade, and then you snort it through a straw, and it blows you away for 5 hours, 6 hours straight. And everything I'm going to tell you about these kind of drugs, I learned from Kevin. Now, when Kevin's a drug addict, he lies all the time. They go hand in hand. If you're a drug addict, you're always lying. But Kevin was a drug addict for 7 years, from the time he was 20 until he died at 27. So in those 7 years, we had a lot of rehabs and recoveries and relapses. In the periods of recovery, Kevin and I were like we were in the old days when he was a little kid. We'd share everything. And he shared everything about drugs because many times in those 7 years, Kevin looked like he was gonna make it. He was gonna beat this most powerful opiate that there is. And when I found out, well, let's go back just a little bit. Nobody starts doing drugs with OxyContin. That's not their first drug. That probably makes sense to you, right? So a normal question that I get asked is, well, was he doing any drugs before that? That's a great question. And what I found out was that Kevin started smoking pot his junior year in high school. And from the time he started smoking pot, I think it was in the winter of his junior year of high school, he said he smoked pot every day from that time on. Now, a good question to ask was, he smoked pot every day in high school from his junior year on? I'm the father. I'm the teacher. I'm the coach. Hey, coach, how'd you miss that one? How'd you miss your son smoking pot every day? Did you miss it? Yeah, I missed it. Well, how is that possible? You know, I've asked myself that question a couple of thousand times, you can imagine. The only answer I've got for it, really, is that up until, let's say, his junior year, Kevin and I talked all the time about everything, every sport in particular, every person, every teacher, all the time. By the time he was a junior, kids start to move away from their father, particularly if they're a high-profile teacher and coach in the school. If you're a kid, you don't want to be, daddy's boy here. So he did kind of stay a little bit more away from me, but that seemed pretty normal. And Kevin was doing great. I think that's the only excuse I've got for missing it. Kevin was doing great. He was on the honor roll all the time. He was the running back for the football team. He still holds the record for scoring an assist in Lynbrook High School. And we were winning state championships, and he was getting Division I scholarships. How much trouble should I have been looking for? I don't know. If they asked me, do you think that if they would have asked me then, do you think Kevin ever smoked pot in high school? I'd go, oh, yeah. I know his friends. I'm not an idiot. I know I've been in high schools. I taught in high schools for 36 years. I know some kids smoke pot. I know some kids on the football team, lacrosse team, they don't smoke it around me. Nobody brings it around me. But do I know that stuff happens? Of course I do. Did I think that Kevin, with the group that he would have ever tried that? Probably. But you see, what I didn't know, what I should have been looking for, is that some people have a disease of addiction for drugs. They're hardwired for drugs, so that there are people to this day, and in your family, I'm sure, people who can take it or leave it. They can take drinking or leave it. They can take smoking pot or leave it. They're not hardwired for addiction. And then there are those, whether it be alcohol or a drug, there are those who, once they do it, it's got them. They're going to do it every day. Kevin falls into that category, but so do members of his family. I mean, he comes from particularly on his mother's side, it's a huge Irish family. There's alcoholics and addicts in there, and this disease of addiction, this hardwired for it, where once you start, you're going to have an awful lot of trouble starting, that runs in families. So looking back now, certainly I should have been a lot more careful. But because I didn't have that disease, my brother didn't have that disease, my oldest son didn't have the disease, my father didn't have it, I'm thinking, he's like me. But he had it for sure. As we look back from the time he started smoking pot, he was smoking it all the time. And then how do you go from pot to Oxycontin? Well, they say that liquor or drinking is the gateway, and it is. But let's face it, drinking you buy, liquor and beer and stuff you buy in a store. Whereas pot you get from an illegal drug dealer. Well, maybe not in some states now, but certainly then. And the guy who sells pot might sell something else. Forget about the guy who sells it. The person who smokes pot might be willing to try something else. Once you're doing an illegal drug and somebody says, well, here, try this. We'll try this. We'll try this. Okay, let's give it a try. Okay, so how do you go from pot to Oxycontin? I really don't know, but somebody offered it to him, said, you got to try this. They chopped it up. He snorted it. Oh, my God, it's the most powerful drug that there is. And that was it. from that time on, that's all he was looking for. Now, where was he now? He was at UMass, and it was the end of his junior year. And something seemed wrong. It was in his junior year. Something seemed wrong. Money was missing. Classes were being dropped. His coach called and said, something's not right with Kevin. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, I don't know. I mean, we have morning workouts, and Kevin's always in great shape, and he's having an awful lot of trouble, and he just doesn't, I don't know, there's something, I don't know if he's doing drugs, coach. He called me coach because I was his coach. I don't know if he's doing drugs, coach, but that's what I would guess. So, the summer comes, and I remarried. So Kevin moved back with his mom and in Merrick, and I was living in Long Beach. And I didn't see him all that much, but I saw him at least every week, and I talked to him all the time and stuff. But money was missing. Money was missing from his mom's house. Money was missing from my house, and he wasn't even living with me. And when you are addicted to an opiate, you can't take days off, You really can't take days off. I mean, it's not like, okay, I'll do it on Monday, and then maybe I'll do it again on the weekend, or I'll do it on Wednesday, and I'll do it. It doesn't matter. Once you're addicted to this drug, you've got to have it every day. What happens if you don't have it? Well, according to Kevin, on the first day, you're just sweating a lot, and you can't focus on anything except for getting the drug. You're kind of like twisting in your own skin there, And on the second day, you're vomiting. You're sick to your stomach and you're vomiting. And by the third day, you've got pains in your joints, in your arms, and your legs, and your back, and you kind of curl up, and all you think about is getting that drug. It's the only thing that's on your mind. Nothing else matters. In that respect, you kind of lose your soul there. There is nothing that you've got to get that drug. And the drug costs money. Now, Oxycontin cost more than heroin. But that's because the price of heroin came down. Now, with these drugs, you start, let's say if you were doing Oxycontin, and that's an 80 milligram pill, you might do 40 milligrams to start with, but that doesn't satisfy you after, let's say, a couple of weeks. So you've got to kick it up to 80 milligrams. And then after that, you've got to kick it up more. If it's heroin, you might start by doing a bag of heroin. And then after 3 months, you're doing 15 bags of heroin, 20 bags of heroin. Like I say, all this I learned from Kevin during those periods of recovery. Now, even though heroin may be as cheap as $5 to $8 a bag of heroin, if you start getting up to 10, 15, 20 bags of heroin, you've got over $100 worth of habit every day. Where are you going to get the money, particularly if you're a college kid, You either work for it or you steal. It's safer to steal from your parents, or from loved ones, your brother, or from your aunt, or whoever. It's safer. Your mother's not going to throw you in jail. At least his mother's not, She's going to protect him. And so, where are you going to get that money? We'll get back to that. Okay, so when I found out how did I find out about the Oxycontin? I knew all his friends. I coached them. I had them in the classroom. I knew his friends. And now, they're in their 20s, so I would take them one at a time. I'd get them in my car. That little intimidation thing that coaches can do to, hey, what's the story with Kevin? What's the matter with Kevin? Friends don't want to give their friend up to the father. You know what I mean? I said, hey, look, there's something wrong with Kevin. You know, and I said, well, I don't know. Well, I don't know. And some of them were more honest than others. But I got his girlfriend, and I think I scared the hell out of her, you know. And finally, you know, I had her at a diner. I bought her breakfast. I said, you've got to help me. There's something the matter with him. And then she started crying. And she said, I promised I wouldn't tell. I promised I wouldn't tell. You know, but he said he was going to stop if I didn't tell, and he didn't stop. And I go, what? You know, what? I was, well, he's doing painkillers. He's doing painkillers all the time. Painkillers? What the hell's a painkiller? He's doing Oxycontin. Never heard of it at that time, which would have been 2003. Right. At that time, I never heard of it. He said, yeah, he's doing Oxycontin. So I went to the Long Island Council, because I didn't know anything about it. I got on the internet, but I didn't know much about it. I went to the Long Island Council for Alcoholism and Drug Dependency. And I said, look, this is my problem. I've got a kid who's, I hear is addicted to Oxycontin. I said, whoa, Mr. Glenz, he's got the worst one. He said, this is the most dangerous drug there is. Nothing good can happen from here. You got to get him into rehab right away. Nothing good can happen once you're doing this drug. It only progresses. It only gets worse. It never gets better. It always gets worse. You've got to get him in rehab. Otherwise, he'll wind up in some kind of mental institution, or he'll wind up in jail, or he'll die. Those are the only three things that can happen from this at this point. I was stunned, you know. Before I found out about this, he's a lacrosse hero at UMass, ready to graduate in a year. All of a sudden, he's a serious drug addict, and I've got to stop it. So I learned about an intervention, how an intervention works. And I was setting this up over Christmas. You can see the date there, the 29th and 30th. So over Christmas, I got to spend Christmas with Kevin and his brother, knowing I'm setting up an intervention and I'm going to put him in rehab the next morning. This is all set up. I've got the rehab out east. I've got a bed for him ready to go. I've got his college coach, some of his high school coaches, his mother, his girlfriend, his uncle, other people that he respects and likes. I got them all in a room, and I got his brother bringing him over supposedly for dinner. You know, but we're ambushing him. All of a sudden, Matt and Kevin come in, and Matt knows about this. I worked it all out with Matt. Matt wasn't real cool about bringing his brother in and having him ambushed, but he knew it was for his good. So Matt cooperated great with me. And Kevin came in, and he was furious. He looked at me with fire in his eyes, like, I can't believe you're doing this. Look, Kevin, sit down. We're going to ask you not to talk until everybody here has talked. All right? And then we'll all listen to you, all right? And each one of us talked about how we know he's doing Oxycontin. We've investigated this. We know he's doing it. We know money's been missing. We know there's a whole story. I wrote these things in this book well before Kevin passed on. I started writing this book when Kevin was in his last recovery, and he was out in Iowa, and I'll get to that. Thinking that, you know, that this was going to be a feel-good story. The all-American boy who fell into the depths of drug addiction came out and became a drug counselor himself. Kevin graduated UMass as a social worker, and social workers often become drug counselors. So that's what I thought was going to happen. Anyway, Kevin went to rehab that day. Let me stay back one more. Kevin didn't want to go. I forgot to tell you. Kevin listened to everybody. We went around the room. Kevin didn't say a word until it was his turn. And when it was his turn, he goes, look, I tried it. I haven't done it in a long time. My father is a control freak. They're going to throw me into rehab. It's not true. I don't need anything here. Not true. Hey, Kevin, look, you've got to go to rehab in the morning. Well, I'm not going. Well, okay. Now I learned you got to use your leverage. I pay your college tuition. I own your car. I pay for your cell phone. All that's gone. All three things are important to him. That's all gone if you don't go to rehab. So, all right, okay, do what you have to do. Well, everybody talked. Then everybody took Kevin one at a time downstairs and talked to him. My friends, his family, take him one at a time, talk to him downstairs. They come back up to me and they say, Larry, are you sure? I go, am I sure about what? Are you sure he's still addicted to this? I go, yeah. Oh, no, I'm absolutely sure. He goes, man, it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like he's okay. It sounds like everything's okay. I go, oh, jeez. He's one of the world's greatest actors then, you know, because he's doing it now. Well, he said he wouldn't go. Everybody left. And his girlfriend stayed. And they stayed in the living room all night long. When I woke up in the morning, Kevin said, okay, let's go to rehab. Okay, here we go. So the three of us, I had Kevin's girlfriend with me, kind of as a buffer, because guys, when guys get in each other's face, when they challenge each other, it's not pretty sometimes, right? So I get the nice girlfriend right in between the two of us here. And we travel out to the rehab, and Kevin didn't want to go in the rehab. But when he got in, there was somebody screaming. There was somebody. It wasn't a friendly feeling place. And he says, "I'm getting the hell out of here." And then all of a sudden they said, "We've got a bed for you." And I said, "You're not leaving." And he went in. For the first 3 days that he was in rehab, he must have called me. I'd say he called me 50 times a day, just cursing me out. Get me out of here, get me out of here, get me out of here. You're a lunatic, you're a lunatic. You're a control freak, it has to be your way, everything. All the time. The phone never stopped. Now, Kevin was detoxing for those first 3 days. Detoxing from this drug, it's awful. It's awful. And Kevin did it, I don't know how many times, at least 4. And after those days, now all of a sudden the drug addiction counselors were making sense to him. And so I'd visit. In the beginning, the one thing that they told him that he couldn't buy was that you're not going to be able to ever have a drink of beer again. You're not going to be able to drink. And Kevin's turning 21, legal. You're not going to be able to drink. You're not going to be able to smoke pipe. You're not going to be able to do anything, because if you do, and you are an addict, if you do, you will find yourself back to your drug of choice, which in this case is an opiate, the most powerful of them all. And so he'd say, look, I won't do Oxycontin anymore, but I'm not going to never have a beer again. I'm not going to not have a beer with my brother or with my cousin or with my friends. And I'd say, well, they say you can't. And so I'd say to the drug counselors, he says he's going to do that. He goes, well, then he'll have to come back. Come back? Coming back, He said, well, okay, the deal is he's getting out. The timing of it was perfect. You see, December, that's the break in college. So he's going back at the end of January, beginning of February, for his senior year. Now, he's going to need more time to graduate. he needed another semester to graduate, but this is his senior year in lacrosse. Been playing lacrosse since he was born, right? So this is it. This is the big time, and he's one of the big players, and he's playing in the big time. And so he did great. He did great. It was the greatest spring for us. I was coaching Limburg lacrosse, but I moved all my Saturday games to Fridays, and I made every one of the games. And me and my wife traveled, down to Virginia to watch them play, and up to Yale or Dartmouth, and out to Penn State and Ohio State, and we loved it. And then we'd go out to dinner with Kevin afterwards, and Kevin sounded great. He was proud of himself. He told the whole team that he couldn't drink. He couldn't. He was an addict that had to go to meetings and all those kind of things. Everybody knew what was going on. Kevin did fabulous. It was a great time. It was a great time, and you had the feeling, we got it. Everything is going to be okay. Now, that's Kevin's last lacrosse game. I had a picture of that. That's why I put it up, because I'll never forget that day. Those are all the seniors. Kevin's second from the left. He's number 11. And those were the seniors. And it was against Rutgers, and Kevin had a big day, had a big win. And after the game, they had a party for the seniors and their parents. And so, of course, we went. And there was a keg at the party. Now, all these guys were 21. And there's a keg at the party, and Kevin goes with one of those red cups, and he goes up to the keg, flips the thing. I woke up to him, I said, what the hell do you think you're doing? He says, I think I'm having a beer. Season's over. I go, Kevin, you know you can't have a beer. I mean, they told you clear. He goes, hey, look, I'm not going to do Oxycontin anymore. I'm 21, and I'm going to have a beer with my buddies here. Season's over. Well, if my wife didn't get in between and drag me away, I think we were going to have a fight right in front of all the parents, and all. It would have been a disaster. So my wife got me back in the car. I got in the car, drove the 3 hours home, and I'm saying to myself, oh, I hope they're wrong. God, I hope those drug counselors don't know what they're talking about. Because even to me, never having a beer ever the rest of your life, it sounded kind of extreme, but that's what they said. That's what they said. If you do, you will find your way back to your drug of choice in no time at all. That looks different than that pill, right? And that's the brother or first cousin, whatever you want to call heroin to Oxycontin. They're the same. Only this is a street drug, all right? It comes in a powder. Sold by a drug dealer, not a pharmacist. And you can see there, you heat it up in a spoon, and then you withdraw it into a syringe. You have to tie your arm up a little bit and plunge it in your arm. And I hope it's as sickening looking to you as it is to me. And I remember asking Kevin during these recovery periods, how did you ever get where you could stick a needle in your arm? I mean, where do you think you were going from there, Kev? Once you put the needle in your arm, what do you think was going to happen then? And he looked at me, now this is when he's in recovery, he says, I didn't think twice about it. All I needed to do was get high. There was no Oxycontin. This was cheaper. I needed to get high. I did it. I was happy to do it. Whoa. Now, that sounds crazy to me, but I'm lucky that I'm not an opiate addict. It doesn't sound crazy to any opiate addicts. Everybody understands that feeling that Kevin had. He just had to have it. He had a craving that was overwhelming, And so now I got a heroin addict son. And how do I help my son? I got a heroin addict son. And there's two theories on this, right? First theory comes from the addiction counselors, of which I went to meetings with addiction counselors for years. And and I have great respect for them. And I will say that everything they told me is true. They told me it only gets worse. They told me that nothing good can happen and that you can die or go to jail, but nothing else can happen. And that because it progresses, it's not long term. And it's very difficult to get off. You have to be totally devoted to get off of this drug. And Mr. Glenz, you've got to use all your leverage to get him into rehab. Well, what's my leverage? I pay for his school. I pay for his car. I pay for his phone. He lived with his mom. I got to get his mom to kick him out of the house. Not going to be done. You know, moms don't kick their kids out of the house. I don't know. But I've got to get him back into rehab. And that's not easy. But, you know, when a drug counselor says, Mr. Glenz, you've got to do this. Hey, it's my son. And I am the right guy to do this. Who are you kidding? I've been coaching kids my whole life. If anybody can do this, I can do it. And I've got a great relationship with Kevin, or at least I did before this drug thing got kicked in. And so, yes, absolutely, I will fix this. You can guarantee this will be done. That's one theory. The other theory is that I don't have the power to fix him. It's impossible for me to fix him. It's his disease. Now, I didn't buy the disease part in the beginning, maybe. I buy it now completely. But I kind of thought it was, I don't know, a character flaw, that you didn't have enough guts to stop doing this kind of thing, toughen up, toughen up. What a coach is supposed to say to people, right? But when it's a disease, it's you don't have any control over this, And so there's I'm sure you've heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's AA. I'm sure you've heard of that. There's a 12-step program. And the 12-step program of AA is used for lots of things. It's used for alcohol, obviously, and it's used for drugs, and it's used for food or shopping or sex or whatever your addiction is. It's a 12-step, it's a spiritual program where you go to your higher power, and from what I was learning, the only guys that get off this drug are the ones that make this connection to their higher power, the ones who do the 12 steps, go to meetings, have sponsors, sponsor others. This is what works, they said. This is what works. But you can't force anybody to do anything. What do we got here? Okay, now, I will say this. I bought that second one about going to your higher power, but that's me. I've had a connection to my higher power for a long time. I studied something called A Course in Miracles, still do teach it actually, and it's all about a connection to your higher power. The other one, the one on the right, Path to Recovery, that's Al-Anon. Al-Anon is the 12-step program for the parents and friends and family of the addict. And I still to this day, Kevin's been gone 4.5 years, I still to this day go to Al-Anon meetings on Sunday. Both of these are about connecting to your higher power. And because I believed that this is what was going to save his life, I was focused there. And I tried to go to my higher power in every decision that I made. But you can't give a connection to a higher power to somebody else. So we're in the cycle now. 7 years. You get him into rehab. He's in recovery. You think it's going to work. He comes out, looks pretty good, looks pretty good, looks pretty good. All of a sudden it doesn't look good. He's not going to meetings. All of a sudden he's got no sponsor. All of a sudden he's drinking, and all of a sudden he's back on heroin. Now what do? You can't, you got to get him back into rehab. He's a grown man. You can't put a gun to his head and walk him to rehab. He's got to go in on his own accord. Unless somebody arrests him. And, of course, that's always a thought, get him arrested. We didn't do that. But we were in 4 inpatient, I don't know how many outpatient, maybe 5 outpatient recoveries. He had addiction psychologists. He had addiction counselors. He had rehabs of all type. He did Suboxone, which was a drug to replace the heroin high. He wound up selling the Suboxone to get money for the heroin. We did try everything. And nothing was going right. Nothing was going right. Until his cousin Rob came in. Now, Rob was 40 years old at the time. Rob was an ex-Marine, and Rob's a cousin. And when Rob was a kid, a high school kid, living in Iowa, he was from Iowa, his stepfather was beating him up. So we took him from Iowa into Merrick, and he went to Calhoun High School, so he get away from his stepfather. So now, then he went in the Marine Corps after that, and now he wants to give back. He loves Kevin. He wants to give back. You know, he got helped out when he was a kid, and he wants to give back to Kevin. He says, well, why don't you bring Kevin out to Iowa? Get him away from New York. Get him away from all these triggers, as they're called. You know, triggers are things that make you want to get high. You know, people, places, songs, I don't know. You know, but get him out of there. Get him in. I mean, Iowa's as different from New York as you can get and still be in the United States, I guess, you know. I said, he won't go, you know. And he said, well, let's ask him. I said, Kevin, you want to go out to Iowa and go to rehab, live with Rob after you get out? He said, yeah. I said, yeah? He goes, yeah, I'll go. We got him on a plane the next day. And he told me later he had 5 bags of heroin strapped to his leg when he got on the plane, just so he could get high before he went into rehab. I don't know. How does that work, right? But the reason he went, he would tell me later on, was that Kevin was so addicted that he was with 2 other guys in a gang of 3, we'll call it. He was robbing ATM machines, not the machines, I'm sorry. He was robbing people who would take the money out of the ATM machines using a taser that it'd stick under the neck, and the person would drop, and they'd take the money and run, and they'd get in the getaway car, and they'd drive, and they'd go get high right away. And then you'd have to do it again. And I don't know how many times he did that. But he's the one who told me that's what he was doing, because, you know, when he got out of there, everything seemed different. This time it was different. He really wanted to make it. He got himself a job as an addiction counselor in Iowa, but it was for gambling. It was a gambling addiction. He didn't have a gambling addiction. He had a heroin addiction. But, and they said he was a great counselor, and he was also working as a waiter. He was working 2 jobs. He also became a college lacrosse coach in Iowa. They don't even have lacrosse in Iowa, but he was somehow wound up being the coach of Palmer Chiropractic School. And he was like a player coach. One game they won 9-7, and he scored 9 goals. I mean, they didn't play real well in Iowa, you know, but he did. So everything was new, everything was fresh, everything was wonderful. I went out and visited him several times. We had a ball. Rob was proud of him. I was proud of him. His brother came out. Everything was great. Everything was great, really. And then things began to unravel. Kevin needed to come home. Here's the first thing. I get a phone call, and he says that his girlfriend, Melanie, who I had met, Melanie, sweetheart, still sweetheart, Melanie's pregnant. Oh, jeez. A guy in recovery doesn't need a pregnant girlfriend. Does he love Melanie? Nah, no. They had already broke up when they found out she was pregnant. But he had been with her for a long time, months anyway. And she's going to keep the baby. Okay. And he's going to stay with her. Okay. All right. Then he decides he's going to return home and introduce Melanie, pregnant Melanie, to all of his friends. Well, I don't want him coming home, but his mom wanted him to come home. Melanie wanted to meet his face. He wanted his friend. He came home. Kevin found a way to get heroin within hours of landing on the plane from Iowa. And when you ask him later on, you know, what were you thinking then? He said, well, honestly, I never stopped thinking about this drug. I never stopped thinking about it. I crave it. I dream about it at night, thinking that I did it. Then I wake up in the morning and I know I didn't do it, but I want it. Then I get through the day okay, and then, the next night I dream about it again. So I thought, maybe it'd be like a vacation. I'm only coming home for 3 days. I'll do it, and I'll go back to Iowa where I don't know where it is, and, it'd be like, I say, when you've got that craving, I know that sounds crazy to you, but we don't have that craving that was burning inside that boy, So that's my granddaughter, Olivia, when she was born. That's Olivia Christine Glenz, and she just turned 5. But she was 4 months old when Kevin passed on Valentine's Day. Now, there's a long story that I wrote about in the book about how Kevin passed on, and I can't really tell that story openly in public without, having trouble and stuff. So I passed that, okay? This I remember, though, at the very end. I say, Kevin, you've got a daughter now. You've got to make this work. You're responsible. I mean, Melanie was a waitress. You've got responsibilities now. I know. But he says, you can't really think I want to be like this, Dad. I mean, nobody would want to be like this, where every second you're thinking about this awful drug, this thing, and you can't do it because you'll let everybody down and everybody's going to hate you, and then I'm going to have to steal for people and all this kind of stuff. You can't really believe I want to be this way. Not say, well, if you don't want to be this way, then do the things that you have to do. But you can't do that for somebody else, Now, the things I learned from this experience, I'm going to go through kind of quickly here, because honestly, they have nothing to do with drugs. When I talk to your parents tonight, I think I'll spend more time on this than I'm going to spend on than I am right now. But this is what I learned. First of all, I learned that only the love matters in any situation. I was asking myself the wrong question. I was asking myself, if I knew that Kevin would be okay down the line, somewhere down the line, I don't care if it's 10 years down the line, if I knew Kevin was going to be okay, could I live with what's going on here? I say, yeah, I guess, I go to my higher power, ask what to do, and my higher power would tell me just love him anyway. Just love him anyway. He's a heroin addict. Love him anyway? Yeah, love him anyway. Well, if I was asking the wrong question. I should have been asking if I knew that Kevin would die at 27 years old no matter what I did, what would you do different? And I wouldn't have fought with him. I mean, we had fist fights. We had more wrestling matches than fist fights, but we had physical. We had verbal confrontations all the time. We were in each other's face. Guys like us, football, wrestling, lacrosse guys, if you get in each other's face, it gets physical fast. And verbal all the time, and miserable all the time. If I knew he was going to die anyway, I wouldn't have done that, because it doesn't work. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. Hey, look, first of all, I had to learn how to forgive myself for not being able to save my son's life. I had to forgive Kevin for having a disease that he had no control over. I had to forgive his mom for enabling him by, providing the house or whatever that allowed this to happen, but she was just loving her son. Moms are like that. And anybody else that was involved, I had to learn to forgive this. And it's really important now that I learned this, because I've seen too many people who have lost their son. Now remember, I've met a lot of people who have lost their sons or daughters, but a lot of them, they lost them to an accident or they lost them as a war hero or something. Losing your kid as a junkie, no good. So I had to forgive all of that. And the last thing there is something that I would spend a lot of time on, but I'm in a public school and I just don't think it's appropriate. But the strength for me to tell this story, the strength for me to come here to live the rest of my life in a positive, loving way, to have more love come into my life than ever before, which has really been the case, has to do with a connection to a higher power. My higher power never told me that Kevin was going to live, but he did tell me that I'd be able to live with it. And I've received so much love from Kevin's friends, family, the community at Lynbrook that knew him, and Merrick that knew him, and all the people from my life. And now more and more people, because I wrote this book, and people write me and tell me how much this book helps them. And I don't even know how it helps them. Probably, I don't know what you're supposed to take from this. I don't know what your message is, but it's helping people. So, I couldn't give a higher power to Kevin. I'm certainly not going to be able to give it to you, but I will say you're pretty young. And if you want to know where the strength is, because I used to ask Kevin, where do you think the strength is going to come from, Kev, in order to beat this? And he answered the same way every time. I don't know. Well, okay. This is where it comes from. You got to actually do the 12 steps. But look, I can't tell you what to take out of this, but I will tell you that because I have done these things here, my life is meaningful to me, especially because there's this little girl. Now that was taken a few years ago. This is Olivia, Kevin's daughter, who comes to New York twice a year, stayed with us all summer. That was her when she was 2. Little girls are scared of me. There's something about the bald head and the whole look, you know what I mean? Little girls are scared of me. So I really got to work at making this little girl like me. And it is working. It is working. That's us a year ago here on Long Island. And that was her last Halloween. That's Dorothy. Toto, you got that? This year, she's Little Red Riding Hood. I talked to her last night, this year coming up. And this is, I took this picture I live in Long Beach. I took this picture on the beach this summer. She's the most beautiful girl you ever saw. I have a great relationship with her mother. I have a great relationship with her mother's new husband. I have a great relationship with my ex-wife, with all of that family and everybody, because I've been able to forgive everything. Because I've been able to focus on the love. And that's what gets me going now. Now, if you ask me why do I do this, I feel like I got Kevin's arm around me right now. Kevin wanted to help other people. Kevin became an addiction counselor. We talked about it. He said, hey, look. He says, I think I'll be able to help more people by being an addiction counselor than you did, Dad, your whole life as a teacher and coach. I said, yeah, I think you're right, Kev, I think you're right. So he can't do that now, obviously. But I can. And so I kind of feel like he's with me right now. I know he's with me. I don't feel like he's with me. I know he's with me right now. His spirit's with me right now, you know. And I got pictures of her all over my house, you know. Yeah, and so that's my book. And that's how you get in touch with me. I don't know what I've done for you, to tell you the truth. You know, sometimes people tell me I may save one life. So certainly it would be worth it if I did. I have no idea. what I'm doing, except for I love doing it because I feel like Kevin and I are helping people, you know, whatever. So that's it. Thank you.